If you're going to advise people on something like, hey, here's how I did the world building for my tabletop role playing game, then it's kind of important to provide some sort of an example. Otherwise, it's just a nice theory. People don't know if it's actually going to help them. They can't see how that might impact their play. Unfortunately, I cut that example from my previous videos because of, well, time. Let me introduce you to Managrub. He is the dwarven cleric from my current campaign, and during character creation, he had to pick a god for his character to worship. He went leafing through the material that I provide for everyone that is playing in my campaign world, and he decided that his cleric was going to be of Hembel, the god of the dead. It is the default state in my world that characters are polytheistic. They worship many different deities depending on what the circumstances are. If they were going sailing, they might offer prayers to the spirit of the storms, Vinru, or to the god of the seas, Lothul. If they're going off to war, they might offer prayers to Zurich, the god of battle. Clerics are different. While they would never teach an idea like, only Zeus is a true god, get rid of Hades and Athena and Poseidon and Hera, only Zeus, they know that each of the gods has a portfolio that is important to existence in human life, and that the gods are cooperative, kind of. Sometimes they grade against one another. Take, for example, Hembel, god of the dead, and Thiril, the god of healing. Thiril is not going to welcome Hembel around because it meant that he was failing to heal somebody. They're also the only cleric of that god. There are other priests around, but my clerics are more like prophets that are empowered directly by the god, given a piece of their divine essence, and they're sent out in the world to fulfill some divine quest. I don't know what that is at the start of the campaign. I'm listening and talking to the players, trying to figure out what are they interested in doing, what parts of the game do they like, do they have any nemesis? Do they have an arch enemy or something that I could loop back into their story? I'll figure it out as we go along. Hembel, as a deity in my world, cares about balance first and foremost. He wants there to be enough order that the machine can keep chugging along. All the gears are in place and existence doesn't break down. He also wants to make sure there's enough chaos that creatures have free will so that this engine continues to go somewhere rather than just spinning its wheels in the mud. And in his particular portfolio as a god of death, he wants to make sure that anything that dies stays dead and goes to its ultimate plane of existence. He's more a judge and jury than executioner or jailer. Hembel is incapable of caring about anything other than death, that transition from life to the afterlife. Because at this point, the gods in my world are a personification of a specific idea, whether that's death or war or healing or cultivation or art, whatever it is, that is the only lens through which they can view existence. Unless, of course, they are divinely connected to a being, a cleric, who changes their perception of what it is that they are. When this adventure took place, I want to say they were 9th to 11th level, and they were searching a swamp in the southeast corner of Oldia for a shrine from the first emperor. When they found it, on the doorway of the shrine, they read an inscription. Upon my head a kingly crown I wear, a mouth that sings with sweetest gentle air. By godly hand am made to sway and play, to mark darkening of the day. To pass this door I humbly thee implore, when you toll the hour, linger not one more. With the ceasing of my song be thou bound, forevermore to rest beneath cold ground. The players correctly identified that they needed to use channel divinity on the bell over the door. Once they did, it would start tolling 1 hour. The door rose and they were allowed entry into the dungeon. I don't know if they were worried about the time limit. I don't know if they just weren't paying attention to this and trying to rush. I don't know if they thought they needed to use channel divinity to open every single door. Whatever the reason was, they missed some of the telegraphs in the next hallway. The bell continues to ring out a steady rhythm. In the light of your spell, shadows dance ominously on the walls. To the left, the stone passage ends abruptly. To the right, about 60 feet away, is a stone door with a bronze lock and handle. As the water rushes in from the swamp, skeletal remains are scattered. A single corpse bobs to the top of the water. Slashes devoid of blood cover its back. I don't know why they didn't check the corpse. I don't know why they weren't suspicious of the shadows. I don't know why the rogue stayed behind with 3 other party members while the cleric marched forward to check the door 60 feet away, but that's what happened. Because the cleric's passive perception was not high enough to notice the shadows in stealth, they got surprised on the first round. That is 1 round with 4 shadows attacking 1 cleric. Yeah, I could separate them and have them each attack individual members of the party. But that would be implausible for these players. They've encountered shadows before. They know undead hate clerics. They know that shadows, well, they're not intelligent. They have a 6 intelligence, but that's above animalistic instinct. So they're going to attack the cleric. So when we rolled initiative, I had all the shadows roll independently, hoping that maybe somebody would get to go before all the shadows got 2 full rounds of hot shadow on cleric action and they could maybe save someone. Fortunately, the warlock did get to go before 3 of the shadows. So first round, surprise, 4 shadows attack cleric. Second round, 1 shadow attacks cleric, and then the warlock gets to go. The warlock looked at this situation and correctly identified that that cleric is not in a good spot and asked to roll a religion check and succeeded. And I told them that yes, the shadows, if they kill the cleric is going to rise as a new shadow, and resurrection raised dead is going to be very difficult. So he makes the hard call to cast fireball on the entire room, killing all the shadows and killing mana, but he doesn't rise as a new shadow. The next person to go is the monk, who runs down the hallway, grabs Mana's body, runs back to the entrance, and then they teleport out of the swamp and go back to Wojin. They know that the avatar of the healing god Firil is there, and they're hoping that they can convince Firil to resurrect Mana. Here's the problem. They met Firil before, and he tried to poach Mana from Hemble. He said, look, you're a life domain cleric. I'm the god of healing. Come over to my side. I'm the god of healing. We'll get along. I've got adventures and quests for you to kind of go on. Let's do this thing. Would Hemble have been mad if Mana had gone over that side? Yeah, but that's not what happened, so I didn't have to deal with it. I didn't have to think of what that meant for my campaign. But Mana stayed true to his god. He said, yes, I believe in healing those that are sick and injured and that kind of thing, but I also believe that it is important that we all eventually go when our time comes and that someone should help those that are left behind deal with it gracefully. We basically turned down Firil. And even if he was willing to overlook that, he is still Hemble's cleric, and he's now in Hemble's care. Firil's not going to go behind and say, yeah, look, I was willing to poach him, but that was life stuff. This is afterlife stuff, legitimately your domain. So let me take your cleric from you, the god of death, and resurrect him. That's divine war stuff. So Firil's not willing to do that. The party decides, okay, well, we know some people that can cast Wish. Let's go see if we can get one of them to do it. And they do. Meanwhile, what's going on with Mana? You don't see, feel, or hear the world so much as just know that it's out there. This place is cold and wet, like an endless fog bank. And there are lights that are blinking on and off, like seeing the sun through closed eyes. There are sounds that reverberate through your very being, whatever you are. Many of them are mournful, some of them are terrifying, and they are growing ever closer. Through this sea of senses, a sound of a clockwork starts breaking through, and you feel a vaguely warm, welcoming sensation from a forward direction. Menace player asks if he knows where he is, and as he is a cleric of the god of the dead, I am not going to make him roll for that. You are in the astral plane, and there are things here that feed or capture the souls of the dead if they don't somehow make their way to their ultimate destination, the outer planes. Mana reasonably decides to follow the clockwork sound. As the fog starts to pull back, some of it is left behind, forming you a rudimentary body, vague and desaturated, save for your hands and your face. Where the scenery emerges, you see an endless landscape of impossibly complicated and large cogs, springs, and gears. The plane of Mechanus and the city of the dead. Mana's ultimate fate is to join the course of judges that help Hemble dictate where every soul goes as they come to see him on their way to the outer planes. I'm thinking here of the 3 kings that help Hades dictate where souls go in the afterlife in Greek mythology, except now it's all of the clerics of Hemble from all of existence in one gigantic senate. You pass stairs and bridges with impossible geometries, with doorways that hang out in the middle of midair. The towers seem to spin to match these different passages to different doorways as mechanical beings usher the souls of the dead to their ultimate destination. You are pulled on unseen currents to the central tower. There is a soft welcoming light emitting from the doorways. And as you enter, it opens to a gigantic bronze forum with incalculable numbers of individuals all staring down at you as you make your way alone to the central dais, above which float 9 massive rings of solid gold, all covered in runes, spinning at unknown rates around a central glowing light. A voice booms out from the light. Important point. I do not make my players talk in character if they do not want to. They just need to tell me what the gist of their argument is so that I can figure out what skills would be appropriate and what the challenge rating would be based on the argument that they're given. So while I talked in character as Hemble, Mana, being uncomfortable with it, just kind of told me what it is that he wants to do.
My child, you've served us faithfully and honorably, and none can doubt your loyalty. You shall be given a place of honor amongst my chorus.
I need to go back now. My companions need me.
You may unburden yourself in this paradise that I have prepared for all of my followers.
But surely you must have cleric in the world. I am your cleric. You must send me back. There are other undead running around, and surely someone must deal with them. If not me, who?
Hemble's being turns glassy and transparent, and through it, numerous worlds are shown, each with a cleric of Hemble fighting the undead.
I do not demean your sacrifices, but you are not alone among my servants. Not the first nor the last, though certainly you are most favored. Another will carry my power in time.
At that moment, the party casts their wish spell. It's an arcane spell, basically forcing the residual power of Jinshi and Ezia, the fabric of the universe, to make a thing happen. Even a god like Hemble cannot stop it from happening. But Mana gets a choice.
The door must not swing open once passed.
I am sorry, my lord, but I fear my companions will die without me. I must leave.
And he takes the resurrection. Hemble has encountered people that didn't want to be dead before, maybe even a cleric, but he's never encountered a cleric that was able to defy his will before. A wish isn't exactly common, a wish to resurrect a cleric even less so. And Hemble is a by-the-book judge. Emotions, regret, and fear aren't part of his portfolio. He can't understand them. And he tries to reach out to Mana to get an explanation, but Mana won't explain it.
Is Scott here?
You know what? He just left.
I could say the rest of the clerics in the forum explained it to him. But the players are the protagonists in this story, in this campaign. And they're the ones that are going to have to deal with this action or not deal with it in Mana's case. So I'm leaving it to them so that I don't invalidate their decision. And they've now tied a god to a cleric that is afraid of the very thing that the god is. Death stops. Anyone that is dying in the world just continues to be a corpse that is in an incalculable amount of pain, as they should be dead, but aren't dying. And if they are somehow completely destroyed, like through a disintegrate spell, the soul just goes to the ethereal plane and can't pass on because the mechanisms of death completely stop. A servant of Hemble, an inevitable, comes to try to collect Mana to get him to come back and explain it. But the party and Mana destroy the thing and they run off to the plane of Earth. Hemble is going through a paradigm shift. One idea has been encountered that is incompatible with the previous idea, and he is forced to grapple with the fundamental nature of what he is. What happens when a thought encounters another thought that completely invalidates the first? It's just not true. The thought dies. So Hemble dies, and in his place, 3 new deities are born. The first is a goddess of noble self-sacrificing, in the vein of like, a hero's death kind of thing, Letus. The second is a deity that believes that life and death are just part of a cycle and reincarnation, rebirth, that kind of thing. Gar, a more naturalistic deity. Then the third is life at all costs. Whatever you've got to do to survive, death is to be feared, and do whatever you have to do, sacrifice whoever you need to stay alive. Dominia, the first evil deity in my campaign world. And they are a new pantheon. because there is not a given that they're going to get along with all the other gods because they are created from the introduction of a mortal fear into a divine being. And they are a sign that these divine beings that thought they were immortal, and so did the dungeon master, can die. This is why I world build the way that I do. So when things do go off the rails, I can improvise and keep the story rolling along. I did not anticipate that Four Shadows were going to kill the cleric of a level 10 adventuring group, but it did. And I can improvise that scene because I spend my time as a dungeon master rather than plotting ahead of my adventures and figuring out where they're going to go next after they get the MacGuffin, who they're going to have to take it to. I go back and go, okay, where did all these people come from? Where did the MacGuffin come from? Figuring out where all the angels, demons, devils, gods, ancient liches, whatever it is, fit into the cosmic order and the cosmic conflict and what they believe in, what they want, what lines they're not willing to cross, allow me to improvise them when they enter a scene that I didn't anticipate they were going to be there. I think we're going to put world building on ice for a little bit because I know there are a bunch of dungeon masters out there that do not run their own worlds. They don't world build, they run in a pre-published campaign setting. I did for like 15 years. I ran in Forgotten Realms. I only stopped doing it because every time an edition changed, they said, no, here's how the universe works. No, here's how the universe works. This god is dead. This god is dead. This god is dead. They were never really gods in the first place. No, they're all back. I get it. Different designers have different ideas of how Forgotten Realms should work, but I got tired of it, so I built my own world. I still think it's a really fun world to play in, or Galarian for Pathfinder, or Eberron, or Greyhawk, or any of those. Those are perfectly fine worlds to play in. You can have a lot of fun doing it. I also think it's a lot of fun to sit down as a dungeon master when you don't have players around and start world building. Just go back, figure out what circumstances led to whatever this MacGuffin is, or whatever the city is, or wherever it is that the adventures are coming to, so that when they go forward, you can start rolling out the content based on what happens before. We are all products of what happened before we arrived. Until next time, Dungeon Masters, remember, you're a player too. Try to have some fun.